So welcome everyone to tonight's Lean Into Allyship event. We are always looking for new ways to bring information to you. And thus far, over the last year and a half, we've done moderated discussions with Dr. G, we've brought in VIP guests, and we've held VIP panels. But tonight we're excited for yet another format to be added, and that is an open mic session with Dr. G. And it's where he's going to share his unfiltered perspective on what he needs in his life now, what gives him hope, and the things that have evolved over the years in his thinking. And so he's going to talk about the importance of giving him space to process these thoughts out loud. But that's really what tonight's all about. But part of what drove the theme tonight is that Dr. G just celebrated a birthday yesterday. So if we can all just wish him a happy birthday, put that in the Q&A, and I'll explain that the chat's been turned off. But happy birthday, Dr. G.
Thank you, Daniel.
And so we do want to jump into this event and give Dr. G as much time as possible, but just a few quick housekeeping things before we get started. So as I briefly just mentioned there, we have turned off the chat because Don from Nehemiah will be including links and resources to you as Dr. G's talking tonight. However, you can use the Q&A to as Dr. G is talking, please enter questions or comments because we want the last 15 or 20 minutes of this event to be driven by you. So the sooner you can enter those questions, the more likely we are to get to them. I know sometimes people have entered those questions later in the session and then we just run out of time. And so just want to mention that. Second, if you've attended this event before, you've heard us say, we want you to consider donating to Nehemiah because we can't expect Dr. G and the Nehemiah team to educate us for free. And we'd also encourage you to look into seeing if your company has a match to really maximize the impact of your dollar. Two more quick things. If this is, again, your first event, don't worry about taking notes. This will be recorded. We will be sending out all of the links that are coming in the chat. We ask that you just soak in the information. You really are present and just ask the questions. We want you, like I said, your questions will drive the second half of this event tonight. And so without further ado, I do want to introduce Dr. G. He is the president, the founder, and the visionary for the nonprofit Nehemiah. And they have an incredible and inspiring vision, and that's of engaging the greater Madison community to bring about, to empower African-American individuals, families, and communities to bring about hope, transformation, and justice. And we're extremely honored to have him here tonight. He has 35 years of experience in this field, serving as advisors to not just across the United States, but to leaders across the world. And so I want you to buckle up. He's going to share a lot of unfiltered views tonight. And with that, Dr. G, welcome. The floor is yours, my friend.
Hey, Daniel, thank you. Thanks for the birthday wish, Daniel, and everyone. It's really great to be here. It's amazing to me that after about a year and a half, we're still showing up and we're talking together. And the reason we're doing it is because we have this confidence that the talking will lead to walking, just making changes and not just thinking differently, but acting differently. So that's really our desire. We don't focus on who's not here. We focus on the people who do come because you show up with open minds and ready ears and an eager heart to want to be a part of the solution. And that's really what I hope for. I don't want to just beat on doors, bang on pots and pans and say, change, change, change. I want to talk to people who are interested in change. And that's why we're doing this. We call this lean into allyship because it requires some intentionality. Leaning isn't just accidental, but you got to position yourself and balance yourself in order to lean. If you don't lean enough, it's not really a lean, it's a nod. And if you do it too much, too soon, without balance, it's a fall. But we want people to lean into this because this is not the responsibility of Black people or people of color to fix. And we've got to be able to not only lean into it, but lean into it together. All right, so a little bit about what's behind this subject matter. And I'm watching the clock because I do want to entertain your questions. We got facilitators who will help us to do this. And so why the name Smooth Edge? I love Smooth Edge because just because it's smooth doesn't mean that it won't cut. And so I like that idea of a smooth edge where you can be smooth and palatable, but you can still say some very relevant things. I had an opportunity to speak last week in Green Bay at a statewide judges conference. And so Supreme Court justices were there, municipal court judges, county judges, commissioners. It actually was fairly intimidating. I know many times I may come across as not being easily intimidated, but sitting in a room with 300 judges, I'm just going to be honest, was intimidating. But I had a chance to share my smooth edge, where I had a presentation and a way of sharing where we are. But at the same time, I had a chance to jab and challenge and use some language that they're familiar with. And so I like smooth edge because it's possible to be polite and professional and somewhat friendly, but still stern and to the point. And I think that that's what we need in the kind of discussion we want to have. What's the significance of grown ass? like why that? I sort of threw it out, not sure if we really go through it, putting that on a flyer. And every time I read the flyer, I just thought, I love this group and this work that we're doing. The significance of grown ass means you're aware of the repercussions of your actions, but you're willing to still and accept them and still act. That saying the significance of saying that these are going to be insights from a grown ass Black man, a grown ass person, is that, I know that there may be pushback, but you're still willing to accept the repercussions moving ahead. It also means that you show up not afraid to speak the truth. Part of what helps us or inhibits us from moving ahead in any area of relationship, whether it's professional or personal, platonic, what have you, it's when you don't show up with true honesty and you say what you think the person wants you to hear or what you're comfortable saying. And so showing up grown means that you're not afraid to show up in truth. Because what I've learned now at 58, looking and feeling great, is if people can get you to move and sway, they like you. If they can't, and they know that you are consistent and real, they respect you. And at 58, I need respect more than I need to be liked. I'm liked by about as many people as I need to be liked by. But I want to be respected because I'm not shakable and I won't move to the funding or the popularity or the acceptance. So that ties into this grown attitude. But also, there's something about being grown that evens the playing field. And so when people say, hey, I'm grown, it means you're not going to treat me like a child. You're not going to put me in a corner, for a timeout. You're not going to take me someplace and discipline me or whoop me. I'm grown. You can't talk down to me. I'm grown. I'm not a child. And so I want the discussion to come from that perspective. I'm not worrying about the repercussions, not being afraid to show up in truth, about there being this even playing field and understanding that there's a right to do this. What's the significance of that grown perspective that grown ass perspective coming from a Black man? Is that in our society, we as Black men are seen as anything but thoughtful in leadership material, anything but thoughtful. We're thought of as menacing. We're thought of as threatening. We're thought of as, bearing the profile of rapist. We don't raise our children. We don't love the mothers of our children. We're out for a fast buck. We're lazy. We're shiftless. All these kinds of things that are perpetuated and pushed in media. The other significance is that our voices have been muted or co-opted. People have spoken up for us because where have we been able to have platforms to say, on behalf of Black men, this is what we'd like to say. On behalf of Black men in America, on behalf of fathers, of Black fathers, or if you're an athlete, you get a platform. If you're a celebrity, you do. But that's not the bulk of Black men in America or the world. And where do you hear their perspectives? Well, let me just move my screen so I can see the rest of my notes. Our actions when Black men did speak up, whether we ran away or exposed lies or we didn't go along with the plan, it's led to our loved ones being threatened. All right, if you do this, we're gonna get your children. If you don't testify, we're gonna do some things to your wife. And you've got a nice little son, you got a cute daughter. If this happens, this is what's gonna take place. And so when we have wanted to be significant and to speak up on what's real to us or to our families, we've either not had access to do that, or when we found ways to do it, we were often threatened. That's what I meant. That's what I mean by our voices being muted or co-opted. But we hold the missing part to the story. Our perspectives are very, very important because we can tell things that we've seen, that we've experienced, that we've witnessed. And if we're going to move ahead, if we're going to build a stronger community, if we're going to build stronger businesses, you've got to have the voices of the people who are not represented there. And so for me, just want you to have a little background on why we talked about the smooth edge and what the significance of a grown-ass Black man. It's a way of stating the freedom of voice, that I want to be able to talk freely to the people about what I freely think without the repercussions of donors or funders or friends thinking, oh, you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't think that. And so with that, I want to go into some things that I've been thinking about, but let me just give you an example of something I want to address, before I get into my other points. As someone who's grown and not worrying about the repercussion, I'm often asked, aren't we doing better? And folks here lean into allyship know that I've been asked that. I've talked about it. They'll say, hey, Alex, Reverend G, Dr. G, whatever they want to call me, aren't things getting better? Not how are things getting better or how do you perceive things, but things are getting better, right? Now, keep in mind, I want things to get better. I have a vested interest in things getting better. I'm a dad. I'm a future grandfather. Perhaps I lead a congregation. I lead organizations. I want to believe that there will be a day where my colleagues don't wake up thinking. And again, I'm looking back like over the year and a half. This may not be the fear today, but over the year and a half. Will I get COVID? If I do, will I get into a hospital? If I get into a hospital, will I get a ventilator? Will I be shot today? Will I be given a fair chance? There's so many things that are going on inside of our minds. But I'm always asked, so I want there to be change. I pray for change to happen. But I'm not going to lie and say I see it at the rate in which we see it if it's not happening. Because if we think of this as a cheap fix, we will treat it cheaply and we won't really have progress. And so I was speaking with someone, and she's a pilot. And so she's asking me, are things getting better? Do you think things are getting better? I said, let me ask you the question this way, because I like to turn things back to people in language that they use, because this isn't complicated, folks. This ain't that complicated. So I said to her, all right, so you're asking me if things are getting better for Black people. Let me ask you the question this way. She goes, okay, shoot, go. When you're flying the friendly skies, don't you know when there's more female pilots? Because you see them. They don't look like the flight attendants. They don't look like the people at the kiosk. They don't look like people sitting in first class. They got uniforms and wings and hats. We know how pilots dress. They don't dress like flight attendants. So when we're making progress, do you see more Black people managing in your department? Do you see more Black speak? Do you hear more grown-ass Black perspectives without fear of repercussion? This is how we know when the airlines have hired more female pilots. You see more female pilots, period. Now we're talking about female pilots, not that we have literature reports on how to recruit female pilots, or here's scholarships we're giving to pilot programs in schools so that we can recruit more female pilots. And let's not even talk about female pilots of color. All right, let's not even break the internet tonight by talking about female pilots of color. But if you fly in 1 out of 4 flights, 2 out of 5 flights, someone comes on, or you watch someone waving you off the plane when you leave, and you say, thank you, Captain. You realize, wow, that's female. Then you begin to know when it becomes normalized, when it becomes expected. When you say, wait, I've flown 5 times, I've not had a female pilot. That's how you know that things are getting better, when you don't see it. But if you never see it, you never see it. You don't want to hear people talking about it. You don't want to hear people pontificating. You want to see female pilots. So when people are asking me, are things getting better? And why are you spending time with white people rather than just bandaging up more Black people? Well, first of all, Black people don't need bandaging up. But more importantly, I want to talk to the non-Black people who are trying to lean into this, who are trying to understand this, and they're trying to be on the right side of it. who want to see more female pilots, who want to see more Blacks in leadership. In our community, talking about change equates change. But you know what? I'm hungry tonight. Tuesday's long. I haven't eaten yet. I'm going to eat as soon as this is over. Talking about food does not satisfy me. When it's been a long week and you need a beer, talking about a beer does not satisfy you. So just talking about things aren't satisfactory. Why is it that when we're in race, we're talking about race relations, just the mention of it, just the discussion of it, just we interviewed a person of color, I think he was Black. Why is that sufficient? Why is that enough? Why is it enough for you? Because it's not enough for me. So here's some things I want to talk about that I've just been seeing as I look at my world and my life and how I'm navigating things differently. I realized that a couple of things have helped me. The world has had a glimpse of what life is like for Black people in America, and they're more aware. The danger is that we lean back and think that we fixed it because we're thinking about it, but we got to really move ahead. So a couple of things I want to talk about. One is appeasing versus pleasing. This is a big thing I wrestle with in my work, in this kind of work in the community. And I had to do some research. I like taking a look at etymology, the history of the roots of words, because we use things so interchangeably that they almost become synonymous in our heads. But appeasing is not the same as pleasing, although you may use the words interchangeably. You shouldn't. Appeasing means to make quiet. Pleasing means to make satisfied. So appeasing means if you're trying to appease someone, the big thing that you're trying to do is shh, don't rock the boat, shh, like a baby on a plane. Like, here's a toy, here's my keys, here's my phone, here's my wallet, here's, you're trying to appease. But when you're pleasing, you ask people, what's satisfactory to you? What's acceptable? What's the true issue? What's the hell? What's the true problem? And so I find that one of the things that hinders better race relations is that we have confused what it means to appease and what it means to please. What is appeasing and what is pleasing? There's something very humanizing about our soul, that it's a place that I think tells us a bit of truth about ourselves and our worlds, whether we listen to it or not. Let me give you an example. And I don't mean soul in a religious way. Historically, why is it that whites who are in power of companies, plantations, why was it that those in power needed to believe that those who were subjugated by them were happy? Why was it important for white people in leadership to believe that Black people were happy? Because I believe that something about their human soul spoke to them and said, this is wrong. This is effed up and you know it. But if you could tell yourself, but look, they're dancing and they're singing and they're smiling, they enjoy this. And listen, we know this. My sister collects Black Americana. She's done it all over the world, in Europe and South Africa, in the US, of course. She'll travel. And there's salt shakers of Black people just smiling, of women whose breasts are dry so that they can't be a mother to their own children because they've been nursing white children on plantations all day. But yet she's smiling as she's holding this white baby that's standing between her and her Black babies. Aprons and pot holders and skillet holders and toaster covers. And they're smiling. You look at most of them, it's not like, oh my God, my soul is gone. Oh my God, I'm missing my homeland. Oh my God, my child was sold after being raped in front of me. Or I'm smiling after I was raped in front of my husband to remind him that I am someone else's property. But you look at those and you see all these smiling faces. So they asked us to sing and to do these things so that they could feel that we were appeased, we were made quiet. They're smiling, they're not unhappy. This is their place. This is how they find faith or find American, or civic life in America. We brought them out of tribal warfare and living out in the wilderness, out in the rural countryside, out in villages to live inside houses, although they're shanties and slave shacks and slave quarters. They told themselves, they appeased themselves, they quieted themselves, because the truth is, to dominate another, to stand between another and her rights and his rights, to sell the children that you've created through rape, to sell them, it's just so dehumanizing. I think for them to realize that such racist acts against people was so disturbing, so they silenced their own pain and their own stories and the insights of Black people too. So historically, because it hurt those in charge to know that was wrong, that hurt us, we're experiencing the repercussions of this. It's hard for a lot of people to hear it because they're telling themselves, no. They were smiling. No. I had help, and she smiled all the time. Miss Juanita used to sing as she bathed us. And so there's been this movement to silence our voices. Because when we say, no, that's wrong, no, that hurt, no, we're not 3/5 of a person. Yes, I can read, I can lead. I do want to vote. What do you mean I don't want to vote? I'm so happy I don't want to vote. So people were made to think, Black people don't want to sit down in a church service in the hot Virginian sun. They want to stand up in the choir loft, up in the loft where it's 116 degrees, because look at them smiling and they're singing in 4-part harmony. Because boy, those people have rhythm. And so there's been this thing. So what many people know about Black people is what that muted lens or filter has taught. Maybe it's not a factor. Maybe it's not a matter of we don't want it, but they're too lazy to want it. They don't want to work hard enough. They don't want to go to college. They don't raise their children. They don't take care of their families. And all the while, there's a power structure that's appeasing itself, that this is really okay with people. And we can take advantage of these systems because at least they're in America. At least they're not living outside in the woods with a bone in their noses. At least they get a chance to be civilized. But when Black people begin to find platforms to talk, we begin to seek out Black joy, we say what's pleasing to us. Like, who said we wanted food stamps? That wasn't created for Black people. That was created for white women whose husbands were out of work. Social Security, that wasn't created for us. And so all of a sudden, we're the blame for these systems that were never created for us. But when we speak, when we say what's important to us or what hurts us, it's a part of the story that's not regularly heard. And so it's so hard for us to share our voices because the response is, but come on, isn't it better? What about Oprah? Isn't it better? And so the opportunity that you have through Lean Into Allyship is to hear real people talk about real stuff so that your perspective of what's palatable, what's helpful, what's satisfying to Black people comes straight from them. For example, when we talk about reentry and reentry services, we know people need to go to prison. When you rape, kill, steal, hurt people, do bodily harm, that's what prison's for. We understand it. But if you listen to the stories of people in our reentry programs or who are reentering our community, they're saying, if I paid my debt to society, if the law says I pay X amount of years of indebted service in prison to show to demonstrate my remorse for my crime, then I should be able to come out and get a job or vote or do the things that humanize people so that they don't feel like strangers who are more prone to commit new crimes, go back to jail. But if you listen to the Black voice, it's not saying we shouldn't go to jail. We'll say we shouldn't go to private jail because somebody's making money off it. Somebody's making money off of prisons in general. The private jail, the people making money off of that, folks are just explaining this is what goes on. I didn't get counseling. I went because of untreated mental health issues and didn't get any counseling, didn't get my GED. They cut educational programs. I'm still waiting for counseling. When you send people away for 8, 10 years and they're around hardened criminals and they're learning new behaviors and are becoming institutionalized and following the rules inside a prison system more than they did outside in the community, you are indoctrinating people who don't know how to function when they come out. Kind of like Birdman. He was white, but like Birdman in Shawshank Redemption. He was so institutionalized, he didn't know how to conduct himself when he got out. So he took his life, but others just recidivized and go back in. Because there are practices in place that can teach you to toe the line in prison, but we have not found a way to put those same principles into programs and fund them in the community to help people to toe the line inside the community. Speaking about appeasing and pleasing, it's why this whole discussion of CRT, in my opinion, is rising to the surface. Because people want to say, it wasn't like that. It wasn't that bad. Let's not talk about it. You'll make things work if you talk about it. But when you look at some of the photos of lynchings, this is not just what Black people have said through propaganda. When you look at the photos of lynching, white children were there. White children were standing next to a charred Black body looking at it. But if we talk about that, not that we're teaching that in elementary schools or even high schools, mind you. I talked to some of the most astute minds in academia who say, you do know that that's not what we're teaching. Teachers don't have the skills or the training or the curriculum to teach critical race theory. They might talk about history. That's not critical race theory. But people will cancel church early. Parents, white parents would pack lunches, picnics to go watch a person dismembered, castrated, burned, alive many times. And they didn't fear that scarring, white children, but talking about the existence of slavery is being taunted as something that would just absolutely scar the hell out of white children. And again, the purpose of teaching that is not to say you're bad, say you're bad, apologize for being white. It's just to understand when power goes unchecked, this is what takes place. So if we don't teach about Nazism in Germany, if we don't teach about what happened to millions of Jewish people, if we don't talk about women not getting the rights to vote and suffrage, and if we don't talk about Reconstruction, do we really change reality? Or do we mess with the perceptions of people to think that's not what happened in Germany? Women really didn't want to vote. And Black people were immigrants. Who was that? Ben Carson, the HUD secretary for President Bush. I knew him as a neurosurgeon when I thought I understood him better. But for him to utter the words that Black people were immigrants, migrated to America for what? Work, culture, music, food, like how could you fix your mouth to say that? And if you begin to say that, and that gets in textbooks, my fear is that we can repeat things because we didn't understand them. I don't want to get stuck in history, but I don't want to be stuck because I don't understand history. I don't want to be stuck in the past. But if I don't understand the past, I'm stuck because of it, because I don't know how to move ahead. So appeasing rather than pleasing, there's a big push to just say, it's just better, it's gone, come on, the playing field is even, let's move ahead. I want that to be the case, because look at what I'm doing in the midst of all of the differences. I use a slide sometimes when I'm giving a presentation. I used this with the judges last week when I said, I showed a picture of Edwin Moses showing my age, famous hurdler, 400-meter hurdler in the 1970s. He won gold in the 76 and the 84 Olympics. And he ran a blazing 47.36 quarter mile, jumping over 10 hurdles. His hurdle time was comparable to the times of some people who just ran the open 400 meters with no hurdles. And my question was, how fast could Edwin Moses run 400 meters if there was not a single hurdle? Because we look at him and we think he can fly, but most races don't have hurdles. So it's hard to really know how fast that is until you compare how fast he ran 400 meters with 10 hurdles, jumping over 10 hurdles, compared to someone just running open 400 meters. So when we look at the hurdles that people of color have had to jump over, it calls the question, how fast could we run the 400 meters if there were no hurdles? How much wealth could we develop if more lenders looked like us? Not to mention if we weren't excluded from these practices after going to war, being in the military, and not being able to buy homes because of redlining. But what is the aggregate financial benefit to the Black community if none of those hurdles were put in place? If we had that aggregate wealth, we wouldn't need white foundations trying to co-opt our Black voices to make them feel happy about our program outcomes. We'd own more businesses and homes and organizations that are doing good in the community. We'd have more schools and colleges. We'll never make up for it. We'll never make up for it. But what breaks my heart is that the story for why those losses occurred are now being called CRT, and it's becoming illegalized, which means a whole nother generation of people can repeat it because they didn't know that it was a thing. The other thing I want to talk about is a concept I'm developing, but I want to call it optimized whiteness. And what I mean when I say that is the white safety net that prohibits true cross-cultural and interpersonal growth that gets bequeathed to the next generation. What do you mean, Alex? What are you talking about throwing on these big words, interpersonal bequeath? If you're white in Dane County, you can go your whole career and not have a meaningful 3-part conversation with a Black person. It can happen. I mean, other than, boy, how about them Bucks? How about them Badgers? How about them Brewers? How about them Packers? I mean, a meaningful conversation that's not about race. So what do you think about George Floyd? Did OJ really did it? I don't mean that. I mean just about parenting, where you grew up, went to school, what you want to be when you grow up. Just think about you, for those of you who are non-Black. How many meaningful conversations that were not about race and were not just the niceties of, hey, how are you doing today? Nice shirt, nice tie, nice jacket, nice dress. You can do that. I'm Black. There's no way in hell I could go a week without talking to white people. And I'm not even saying I want to do that. But think about the difference, my perspective of white people, because they serve me in restaurants, they cook my food, they teach the classes that I needed for my degrees. They run the libraries, they run the nonprofits, the funding arms that support these organizations. But yet the people who work in these places can go their whole careers, or at least a year. Let's just be nice, a year, and not have a meaningful conversation. So what happens when you don't talk to people from a particular group? So you don't know that individual's name, not that they speak for everyone in that group. Then how do you know what they think and what informs your thinking? Is your head and heart, are your head and heart just empty? Like, I don't know what to think about Black people. If you don't know anyone, and then you're seeing images and stories and history and news and headlines, don't you think we're a little prone to being fed information that causes us to think what these folks are thinking? So I call it optimized whiteness, that without any real effort, put on top of that, then move to rural Wisconsin, rural Illinois, rural Iowa, rural Minnesota. Then you really don't have to see or talk to or talk about. It is still easy in a time where 12% of America's population is Black, for many white people to not have a meaningful discussion. And if you don't know people, it's hard to respect them. And if you don't respect them, it's hard to love them. So then how do you treat them when you interact with them? Is it false niceties? I hope they don't live in my backyard. I hope they don't want to marry my child. And I'm not just saying white people don't like Black people. But what I mean is, as white folks, you haven't even been taught what you're missing by not having cross-cultural friends. I know the benefit of having white friends. I know the benefit of having friends that are not Black. A perspective and understanding, knowledge of their ethos, what's modeled to my daughter, my family, my friends, my peers. I know the benefit of it. But I'm wondering if you understand what you're even missing or lacking. And what's the likelihood that your children will have meaningful cross-cultural friends? Because your children, should you have them, are going to live in a world, in an America that's not majority white. Will they reach for power, stepping on people and hurting people the way people do now because of fear that that day is coming? Fear that we're going to do to white people what white people have done to us? So what prepares your child to be a world citizen? What prepares your child to be a leader if the only people they know and have play dates with look like them? And haven't we lived in that world long enough? And how's that working for us? Whites can go their entire lives without having a meaningful conversation with a Black person on an ongoing basis. That's scary to me. When there are more Black people in Wisconsin than ever before, more Black people in this country than ever before, and still that's the case for most folks. Well, all right, Dr. G, let's be for real. I don't want to talk to someone, and I've said this before here, I don't want to just talk to someone because they're Black. But you're okay not talking to them because they're Black? You're either going to talk to them because they're Black or they're not. But if you talk to them, you might find that you both like soccer, you both like baseball, you both like arts and crafts, you like gaming, you both went to Wisconsin, you both have relatives in prison, your mothers have dementia. You may find things that you connect on, but you can't let the fact that they're Black freak you out, like you're somehow taking advantage of them. Because Black people might say to each other, yeah, there's this white person who maybe they make a point of talking to me. I think it's because they don't know any Black people, but at least they speak because no one else does. That's not necessarily problematic unless you're only asking, can I touch your hair? Can I feel your skin? Whatever. But I don't hear people complaining about that as much as I'm the only Black person in his office and nobody speaks to me. They'll come in and talk. Nobody comes to my desk and say, hey, Cassandra, how you doing? Hey, Dan, how you doing? And so if you're worrying about offending Black people, not that I'm speaking for all Black people regularly, but I will tonight, let it go on the record that I'm speaking for all Black people on leaning to allyship. I would rather have somebody acknowledge my presence, acknowledge that it might be a little isolating in that space, but no one else looks like me, and that I'm sitting in a place by myself, taking breaks by myself. I would rather for someone to come over and speak to me. How are you enjoying the class? How are you enjoying the workshop? Where do you work? Not how long have you been Black? That was meant to be a joke. It's okay to laugh at that. You're not racist if you laugh at that. I'd rather encourage you to err on the side of speaking to someone, because you may and most likely will find things you have in common that have nothing to do with race. And if we don't do this, what does it mean for the next generation of white children who will not even know that they're supposed to? Like, at least you know it's a thing. You're in your 20s, 30s, you're in a professional setting, you're like, it's a thing. I didn't even know it. And you might work for companies where there's some diversity, but you haven't met anyone. But if your child is in an all-white setting or in a very diverse setting, but don't know how to talk or interact, or no one encourages it, or there are no play dates, then we do this all again for the next generation. And I can't even. So appeasing to make others quiet, optimizing whiteness. Last is just the assault on the Black family is just unbearable. Between police brutality, the shootings of unarmed people, COVID deaths, and the rise in dementia, mental health issues, and mass incarceration. Either these systems are broken, or we just believe that Black people are just genetically inferior and more prone to crime and illness. And so we have to talk about these issues. We have to overhaul these systems. We've got to have people who are non-Black at the table being a part of that process. I still believe with all that's happened that we can make a difference, but we got to really lean in together. And you can't just listen to these discussions. You got to go meet your own friends, your own associates, make your own decisions, put your own plans together, and you've got to be part of the solution. Dan, I just saw you pop back on live, and so I want to make sure I pause there to give us about 20 minutes of questions. So thank you all.
Well, thank you, Dr. G, as always. So there are some questions that have come in, and I want to address them in the order that they came in, because it's kind of the order that you talked about, but I think we can unpack a little bit more of that third point, because I think I did cut you a little short about the assault of Black people, and we can touch on that potentially in the second question.
Sure.
First one that came in, though, is you were talking about people making profit off of prison and really some of the injustices around that. And Laura was questioning, what do you think about the movement to abolish the prison and the police systems?
Oh, that's a big one. It's a complicated, so I can't take that on. I don't know how broad the movement is to abolish those, because for rapists, murderers, I want a police and a prison. I want a court, I want a judge, I want a DA, I want all of that. But we must admit, Daniel, and lean into allyship, folks, we must admit that we have a law enforcement group that's overly militarized in its training. My brother just retired from 28 years of service in the city of Chicago. And he's a good cop. He's a different man than he was when he took this job in his 20s. It's taken its toll on him. So I know that there are millions of good cops that are out there, but the system is so militarized that, you know, his boss could use the N-word in front of him. What's it going to do about it? It's hard to if years in, like, can we, is that okay to say it here? And so we just got a system that's got to be overdone. Corrections systems that we do. But it's got to be dismantled in real brute. No one's going to get me on here on record saying we should have no police, no prisons, but it should not exist the way they do now, because they were not built to do what they say they're supposed to do. And someone's being paid, someone's getting jobs, and we're constantly being destroyed.
Thank you for that. And I thought that was probably going to be where you took that question. I know that was a big question to unpack. So thank you for also keeping that brief, because we do have right now 6 additional questions that have come in. And I know, and this may go, so you talked about appeasing versus pleasing. You talked about optimized whiteness. And I think you were getting to this as far as the assault of Black people. But Blake was curious, you know, what do you find is pleasing right now? So, you know, the first 2 are more potentially concepts for us to ingest, but what are the potentially things that you find displeasing or most displeasing right now? And I know we had you go quickly through that third bullet.
Sure. I'm sorry, Daniel. Are you saying pleasing or appeasing?
What do you find displeasing?
Okay, so, displeasing about service in general.
Just right now about So
the world.
It's a very broad question they asked. So
sure, what I find displeasing now is that foundations are just as white today as they were when COVID broke. I found that people moved quickly to get Black people and people of color, poor people vaccinated because we're so connected. We're making white people sick and slowing down the workforce, and people want to get their hairs cut and their groceries bagged and all the kinds of jobs and things that we have. I'm displeased that we did not stop and ask, how is the pandemic and how has the egregious police brutality and the deaths of innocent Black people or unarmed Black people impacting the mental health of Black social service providers? How is all of this weakening us, making us think of going into another career, leaving gaps and holes in our communities, making it more vulnerable? The fact that no one's gobbled us all up and said, how do we fix this issue? The question is, how do we appease and not how do we satisfy? It's how do we make people quiet and not how do we fix this issue? And the fact that it has not happened, I don't feel we're rounded by the mayor, the county executive, the governor, the president, elected officials, senators, representatives. I just feel like we just tried to get through. Let's show we're doing stuff. Let's make sure we say that we're here. We're sorry that Black and brown people are dying. People still don't fully understand why that is happening. They don't understand the preconditioning issues that are stress related and stress induced oftentimes. We don't understand why all these Black people and brown people were dying. We just think because they don't have medical care, or they live in the inner city and the ER is their clinic. I am displeased by the fact that things seem to be better now and the economy is bouncing back. And pretty soon COVID and police brutality will be a thing of the past, like the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. And we're going to say, but it didn't kill us and it made us stronger. I am displeased that Black people have still not been fortified. The agencies we run have still not been asked in light of everything that's happening in our country, what hit have you taken? And how do we make sure your agency is here in 10 years to be able to help us, help your community? The fact that it has been somewhat cosmetic and we've not gotten to the true issue makes, I am displeased that I have been appeased and not pleased.
Well, and I think to that point, the question that just came in from Susan, so thank you, is to go back to the comment that you had initially mentioned when you kicked off the event about when you were, in a room of all of those judges. So Susan was just curious as it relates to appeasing versus pleasing. Were they engaged? How were the comments? Were they positive? Did you get enlightened responses, or do you feel like it's a more of a cosmetic, performative response?
All the above. I mean, there are some folks there. I tell you, I went from folks who clearly did not want to be there. Oh no, we got a Black speaker and they put a reverend in front of his name and he's from Dane County. And so I think they're trying to find out what group I'm in, what camp I'm in, where I can be placed. But I said some very pointed things. I said, I've got here a list of all your committees. I've got a list here for all your speeches. I've got a list here of all your guides. None of them have looked at disparity in the criminal justice, in the court system. How could you, as folks who make rulings on data, not even study this? Now, that's a ballsy thing to say. And your response might be that you didn't like that I was talking like a grown-ass Black man who wasn't owned by them and I could say these things. But at the same time, I had people in very high positions in that room say to me, you said things in ways that I could hear it. Can we get together and talk further? You have a very interesting way. I got invitations from people to talk, to continue the dialogue, who did not have to come up to me to say that. And so you never know. It's why you speak truth to power. It's why, even in a very professional setting, without saying, I'm a grown-ass Black man, I'm gonna say whatever the hell I want, I went in with the perspective that I'm a grown-ass Black man. I don't work for them. They work for me. I and the people of Wisconsin have elected them. So I'm going to say the truth. I told them, I'm not going to come here and show you a film. I'm not going to try to beat you down. I'm not going to try to make you guilt-ridden. You make a living listening to testimony. I just want you to listen to the perspective of your peer who's one Black man. You've seen me talk to you about U.S. Black history in each of your judiciaries. I want you to hear my sworn testimony. I hereby swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. And talk to them about my life in their state as a Black person. And said, now, if you don't care that this is the perspective of a Black person, that's all right. And that is largely held. But if you don't care that this is important to me, then we have a larger problem than I believed. And so I'm finding that the most honest I can be in those settings, the greater the chance of touching one or two people who can make a change. And Daniel, the one or two people that came to me to talk, it could make a big change if they have a different way of looking at things. But it took me years to get to the place to realize who I was and that I could say this and not just come in and talk about implicit bias. Like I had to figure a way to really reach their hearts by saying, I'm about to give a sworn testimony. So listen to it like that. Don't listen to it like I'm about to give you a lecture about critical race theory. I had a chance to sneak up on their radar by using some language and an approach that I think is unique. I think it's going to give us a chance to at least have a conversation. But there were those who shut down, those who were somewhat flippant, but there were those who heard things from a person in a manner in which they never had before. They leaned in, Daniel. I think they leaned in. Some of them leaned in.
And thank you for that. And for those who are trying to listen to Dr. G and read the chat, Don did share the comment of one of the judges, which alluded to some of the positives that came out of this as well, but the challenging topics. And I do want to stress one thing really quick that Dr. G said. So in our first discussion, we talked about this. The first time I ever met Dr. G, it's all about the one or two people. And I want to make sure that you're not taking away that you have to be a judge to make that change. So the whole point about this, lean into allyship, whether you're just starting, you've been on this journey for a year or two, or you've been multiple years in, one or two people, you can be one of those few people who actually make sustainable, meaningful change. And so I want to make sure you don't underestimate yourself and that you're just one person, because you heard it from Dr. G that will make a huge impact moving forward.
Yes.
And a couple more questions that have come in, and this one's a little bit longer, so try to bear with me, but I'll try to paraphrase this from Donald. But in short, a lot of people in our culture just can't handle unpleasant emotion, and they actually will focus more on avoidance strategies than ever having really an uncomfortable conversation, right? They want to keep things easy, silence is violence, things like that. And there's a two-part question. This one, do you believe that's true? And if not, why not? And then the second part is, if you do believe it's true, how do we make progress with white individuals who hold the power and the privilege, but yet they aren't willing to have those crucial conversations?
Let me start backwards, Daniel, then move to the front. I will say, no, let me start at the front. Yes, I believe that. I think that statement reflects a bit of escapism. Oops, I'm sorry, we still there?
Yep, you're still here.
Sorry about that. A call came through and I got to turn my phone off so that doesn't happen. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about that, team. I'll come back on. I thought I lost you guys. I think there is this true that escapism, burying our heads in the sand, means that we don't have to listen. They're so emotional. They're so angry. They're so, part of this is cultural. Sometimes when Black people are loud, doesn't mean that we're mad. It's just maybe how we express things. And so if you ever freaking gone to a Badger game, you know what emotion is, or a hockey game, you know what emotion is. So this whole idea that white people are frail and can't stand their emotions, screw that. Because I've seen white people be emotional. Having a couple of beers at parties and want to hug me and touch my hair. I've seen emotional. So this fact that people don't want to be emotional, I think it's an escape. We need to stop it. The other thing is, when you care about people, you realize how damaging it is to not care and to not listen. And what I've said is, as hard as it is to witness my mom's dementia, it's nothing like having it. So if I can sit with her and have a shake and hold her hand, eat some fries and talk, if I can be with her in her pain, then it humanizes her pain and it dials me into my own humanity. When you miss an opportunity to lean into true pain of someone you care about and you don't, it erodes at your own humanity. And the third thing is, we don't talk about this a lot in race relations because we talk about tolerance, understanding, belief systems. We got to get right back to just really caring about people. The folks I'm getting a chance to know, the cross-cultural relationships, the folks who are helping to run this call, those of us who go out for occasional beer or talk or get together because we've gotten to know each other through leading the allyship. We care about each other's lives, whether it's race, whether it's COVID, whether it's how your young child is doing, how's your job, your spouse's work, your job doing. We care about those things. I don't even think we've gotten far enough in the discussion to bring, where does just genuine love fit in? Genuine care. I just like the person because we have a lot in common, or they remind me of someone, or they're funny, or I enjoy them, or they're inquisitive. I think we've been so hands off from this and we've escaped it so much that we realize that the most compassionate or impassioned person in the room might be potentially your best friend. And if you and Lauren and AJ and others just kind of did this because sometimes I get loud or upset or Lolita does, then you guys would miss out on some cool ass people, because those things don't mean that we're trying to gobble up white people and get people told and beat them down or browbeat them. If we just go by the emotion, you miss what's going on. The person who's yelling the loudest in an ER is either the most afflicted or the most scared. Either way, they're uncomfortable and they could use some help. And so people are loud. It doesn't mean they're destructive. It means they're either in a lot of pain or they're in a lot of fear. And so I think we got to begin to understand, how do we care? What if that were my son? What if that were my sister? What if that were my dad? How would I react? What would I do? How would I feel about that, rather than, oh, they must be trying to get over on something, or this is a setup, or this is a scam. I just think we've got to begin to move towards a greater sense of humanity, a greater sense of love and mutual admiration, and not just be so afraid of each other, Daniel, because when we miss that, when we connect with people, then we want to know they're hurting because we don't want them to go through that alone. I think when that's woven into the whole race story, we're going to see true progress. but not enough people are talking about respect and love.
And I will never forget. So I did share this on a previous LIA event. So I apologize for those who have listened to me say this already, but I want to stress what Dr. G just said. And when I first met him, I was asking him to correct me when I say things wrong. I was trying to, say, well, I've read Ta-Nehisi Coates and I've read all these other books, like I'm woke, quote unquote. And I said, just correct me when I'm wrong. And you said, and you literally did this, Dr. G. You said, lean in, develop relationships, and build that genuine relationship. And we can talk about these things. And so I want to just stress that again. It's not about asking those surface level questions. If you take one thing away from tonight, it's about talking to individuals, developing that relationship. And that's why we're here today, because Dr. G and I have had this relationship for 2 years plus now. And I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but you've forgiven that. And so don't be afraid of making mistakes along the journey. That is part of this allyship journey that we've talked about in the past.
Right.
Don't let fear lead to inaction. And now we're going to go quick on a couple of these, Dr. G. One is, let me look here. Really quick about self-care. So we've talked a lot about, the concerns and the things that are displeasing to you. How do you recharge your batteries? How do you take care of yourself despite all of this and wake up and go for another day and start all over?
I'm starting to weave in being more intentional about exercise, and I'm finding ways that I can do that regularly. And I've been real consistent for the last, I'd say since late summer, since September, of finding an activity that I can do with other people, even be somewhat competitive in it. That helps a lot. Writing and talking about it, believe it or not, helps. Sometimes I come on here because it's good to let off steam, because I don't feel muted or stifled. Getting away, just with family, being away and not feeling responsible for all of this stuff that takes place. And the other piece is being honest. When you have no outlet for just saying what you're feeling or saying ouch, it makes the pain more intense. And building relationship with allies, so that I realize that there are some people who really want to get this, and that not everyone is afraid to lean in. But exercise, rest, and time away is so important.
And I feel like you're reading my Q&A, because the last question I was going to add, well, two more quick questions, but one was, this came in from an anonymous person, but they've been blessed by your writing. So you just mentioned the writing and reading. So writing for Nehemiah and Black Like Me, they found out you wrote a book, which we can put in the chat, but any upcoming book projects, any sneak previews, anything you can give us here, Dr.
Man. G? Actually, I've written two books, but I'm working on something in collaboration with my staff. We're turning 30 next year, so I'm thinking about that. But I am working on this project because I want to personalize everything from growing up in Madison, being one or two Black kids in my class, to my experiences with that experience, to the whole justified anger journey and the response of the broader white community to a Black man speaking up. It's so funny. People always ask me, and you've heard me say this here, people always ask me, do you feel accepted by the Black community? I'm like, screw that. Of course. At the end of the day, we know it's us against the rest of the world. We're going to find a way to come back together. But the mean shit that white power brokers have said, not all, some, because I challenge systems, is way more cutthroat than what Black people say to each other. So I want to write about those experiences too. And so I am thinking about a project that allows me just to not to weave the story together, to string some of the pearls of my experiences together in a way that I think can help practitioners, help academia, just help people think differently about this. Everything I do, I want to help to move the conversation ahead and not just focus on what I'm doing. But I am toying around with two writing ideas right now.
Way to tease us a little bit there. I like it. I like it. But Don did drop the link for his book. So again, feel free to go get those. And I know we're at 8:00. So at this point, I will ask one more question to wrap us up, Dr. G, at the end of this. But right now, I do want to, we're really excited to have Haley here from Nehemiah. She's actually joining us to highlight a few incredible and impactful, both educational, but also volunteer opportunities. And I want to just echo what Dr. G said earlier. It's great to talk about these things. It's great to listen. That's a great first step. But the next step is taking action. And that's where Haley's going to talk through a few opportunities for you right now.
Thank you. It's a joy to always hear you speak, Dr. G. I enjoyed listening. So I just want to remind everybody about our three pillars of educate, donate, and affiliate. So we can go to the next slide. So for our educate pillar, just stay in the know with what Nehemiah is doing. We have our annual appreciation event coming up next week, actually, where Dr. G is also going to be speaking again. So if you want to hear some more from him, join us there. And we have our White and Wondering event on the 18th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m., which focuses on kind of white people on their allyship journey and helping them continue on with that. And then our next is donate. We want to remind everybody to gather funds and goods within your sphere of influence. We are hosting right now a Thanksgiving Essentials Bag Drive to hand out to families in the community for Thanksgiving so that they have essentials for the holidays, along with a basket of food for them to cook for their Thanksgiving meal. So we're working on doing some donation drives for that. And you can always donate funds directly to Nehemiah so that that money goes to wherever we need it and to do the work that Dr. G is driving. And then lastly, we have affiliate. We always welcome everyone to work alongside us. You can take the volunteer survey so that you can get more involved to hear more about our opportunities, follow us on social media, and invite friends to come with to all of these events so that you can have them learn more and kind of expand this idea to Madison and greater, hopefully. That's the goal.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Haley.
Yeah.
And to add on to that, so additional things that we will actually, so at the end of every event, we always have an Ally in Action challenge, and wanted to always stress, allyship is not a title, it's not a destination, it's truly a journey. We want to make sure that it's about that daily and consistent practice. And so what, as Haley said, the three pillars that we always talk about as for would-be allies are educating, donating, and affiliating. And so on the affiliating side, the November challenge is to feel free to watch any of the Lean Into Allyships that have already occurred, but one specifically as we think about Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up is to watch the Lean Into Allyship, have yourself a very anti-racist holiday. And what that's meant to really look at is how can you have impactful, meaningful conversations that move and I guess move this effort forward. It's not about winning the argument, it's about advancing the cause. And so we will actually send that link out if Don hasn't already. And as Haley just mentioned, subscribe to Nehemiah's volunteer newsletter. So Haley sends that out every week, I believe. And again, more ways that you can get involved. If it's not in your community, it could still stem new ideas that you could do in your own community. Because if it's in Madison, it's in every other community as well. And then as what Haley just mentioned, well, actually, let me promote the next event real quick, and then we will talk about the appreciation event and have you talk to that, Dr. G. So I did share at the start of this event that we are actually bringing new formats to these events. And this is a new one yet we're going to try in December, and we're really excited for it. So mark your calendars for December 14th. We're going to do a life library with a theme of life of a pace setter. And you saw Dr. G's excitement. One thing I will tell you early on in my journey that was most impactful is exactly what Dr. G said, listening to people's lived experiences, not just the work that they're doing, but talking about the life they've lived, the challenges that they've had to overcome. And that's exactly what this event is going to be. It's all about that lived experience, and it's going to really humanize the content that Dr. G has talked about tonight in the history course, other Lean Into Allyship events. And I really encourage you to set this night aside because it's going to be that personal and intimate experience that you don't want to miss. We're bringing in 3 speakers to talk about this, and so you're going to hear from them and actually have Dr. G ask them a few questions as well. So it's going to be a really special event. First time we're doing it, so we're really excited. But as you mentioned, Haley, there is also this annual appreciation virtual event. So I want to turn it back over to you really quick, Dr. G, to talk about this event. And then any other comments that you have, and specifically if there's one takeaway that you want people to have tonight, what would that be?
Sure. This event, of course, is virtual because we want to make sure that people are kept safe, but it's just a way to give an update on what we've been doing and to let people know we could not do this work without you. The community has really stepped up in a tremendous way in the past year and a half to help us in our efforts to empower our community and transform the face of leadership. So if you'd like to get a greater sense of what Nehemiah is doing, not just this aspect, that we show through Lean into Allyship. But if you want to get a greater opportunity of what we've been doing for the past 29 years, show up. There's a link that's in the chat room. Join us. It's a free event. We'd love for you to be a part of this. I will also mention in this current season of my podcast, we're doing a series called Embracing Black Joy. And so if you'd love to hear Black people just talk about what that means, that might sound strange, like, well, is there Asian joy, Latinx joy, white joy? I want you to hear how Black people define it. The episode that just dropped this week is an interview with four Black women who are following their passion to live out their joy. And it's taken them separately to Lisbon, Portugal, and hearing their perspective as expats is just amazing. So tune in. There's a link. Follow it. Let me know what you think. And I think to answer your question, Daniel, the one thing that we want people to really do is the affiliate part. People will educate and think I've done a session, I'm good. They'll donate. All right, I gave my resources, I'm good. But affiliate means you hang out, and I'm going to hear stories, and I'm going to learn mine and share it. I'm going to bring friends along. I'm going to sign up for the newsletter. I'm going to bring more people into this because I know people who want to, but they're afraid because maybe they think this is our CRT and it's bad, or we're going to be bashed and called white devils. If we have the people who are here, if each of you help to bring 5 or 6 or 7 more people into the fold or into the discussion, into our meetings, getting on our mailing list, that's more people that we can help influence. You don't have to do it on your own. I would say really lean into the affiliate part and just ask yourselves, after educating and donating, have you connected and positioned yourself in a way that you continue to learn and grow? Not because you want to help Dr. G and my staff, but because you want to help yourself, your family, your children in being better world citizens. Affiliate.
Well, there's the mic drop. I feel like that is how we're going to end this event. So thank you for that, Dr. G. That was awesome. So for those, again, if this is your first event, just look for a follow-up email coming from Justified Anger. So it's going to have a recording of this. It will link you to actually all of the previous events on the YouTube Justified Anger channel. And it will also include the links that Don has been so quickly sharing with you. He's incredible at what he does. And so with that, thank you, Dr. G. Thank you, Haley, AJ, the entire planning team, as well as Lauren and Don, for really bringing this event together. It takes a lot of people for this event. And with that, thank you for taking the time tonight, and have a wonderful evening.